everybody, welcome back to my show. I'm so excited to be here with my very good friend, Grace Gelpi. Grace is a saxophonist who I've worked with a few times. By the way, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and post pictures below of what we're cooking today. Grace, can you introduce yourself and let us know what we're cooking today?
Absolutely. So, like Spencer said, my name is Grace Gelpi. I recently graduated from Michigan State University with a degree in music performance and music education in saxophone. I student taught at an elementary school in the Detroit suburb area in the fall of 2019, and I've been out of school for the past semester. I will be starting my master's degree at the University of Georgia in the fall, and I will be serving as the graduate teaching assistant for the saxophone studio there. And the way Spencer and I know each other is through collaborating on a piece that I commissioned from him with the Queer Saxophonist Consortium, which I led, and I premiered that piece called What is Your World? At the North American Saxophone Alliance conference this past March. Yeah, that's a little about me. And today we're going to be cooking some vegetable lasagna.
Yeah, no, I will say the nice thing about the premiere of that piece was it's the last piece that I had played in person since everything shut down. And, you know, I feel really great though, because Grace just took this thing that really meant a lot to me and she did a really wonderful job. So it was definitely important to me to have her on this show. One thing I will say though, that's slightly different about this episode than some of the other episodes is that Grace and I somewhat more collaborated on this recipe in the sense of, you know, I know Grace is a vegetarian, but it's also like when we were talking about what should we cook, some of the recipes that came to mind, like it wasn't like some of the other episodes you've seen where the recipe was something that they've been making for a very long time or something that they've been really perfecting, and that's just not Grace's cooking background. And so I wanted to come up with something that would be pretty easy to put together for anybody. I think that this is a really simple recipe. A lot of the components that go into it you can totally mix and match. We'll be making our own sauce. You do not need to make your own sauce. You can buy jar sauce. You should make your own sauce because it's delicious. And it's really not that hard. But and a lot of any of the vegetables that you put into this recipe are totally optional. You also can use meat if you want, which is the nice thing about lasagna is you can make lasagna. You can make it however you like. So, anyways, let's get started. So make sure your heat is on your pan, and let it heat up for just a little bit, and pour in just a little bit of olive oil. You know, the amount that you put in there. I have been doing this for a while, so I just eyeball it. You could do about a tablespoon or two, and let that heat up just a little bit before you put anything into the pan. The next thing we do is we're going to put white onion, and we're going to put it directly into the oil. And what I'm going to do next is I'm actually going to coat that onion in the oil. While that's cooking, I'm going to we're gonna let that cook for about a minute or two, and then we're going to put the carrots that I've diced pretty finely, celery, garlic, and we're going to coat that in the olive oil. So Grace, you just graduated. Where are you streaming from right now?
I am currently living in East Lansing, Michigan, and I'll be moving to Athens, Georgia on August 1st. It feels like so far away, but it is way too soon.
And that must be something right now, having to think about moving right now during a pandemic. I think that a lot of people who are starting degree programs in the fall are probably all feeling somewhat similar. How are you feeling about that?
Yeah, so the concerns of moving have been really real, like just because moving across the country is super scary, and starting a new degree is super scary, and going a place where I don't know anyone is really scary too. And so I've really been grateful for my parents in this time, kind of helping me navigate the logistics of moving and being safe. We're not flying at all, we're driving and renting our own van to move my things, and we're moving things ourselves rather than hiring movers, which makes it a little safer. And then just the prospect of starting school in the fall is also really nerve-wracking, because the University of Georgia recently came out with their guidelines for the fall. We are doing in-person instruction, and masks are currently not required for people at the University of Georgia. They're strongly encouraged. So that's from the whole university, not the School of Music. So I'm curious what the School of Music's more specific guidelines are going to be. But that's something that's been on my mind. And honestly, there are a lot of people who have been talking about just deferring for another year, but I know that's just not right for me, just because of my journey. And because the position I'm going to be holding at school in the fall, but it's definitely been on my mind. So I'm nervous for the new opportunities, but also really excited for them.
And I have to give a shout out, without being political, to Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, who I just think is doing a really fantastic job. I don't know if you agree with that, but she's just really standing her ground, and I think that is really important. To also see that I think it's really important to see that women politicians can have show leadership in these times, and in actuality, I'm seeing women doing way better in this area than most of the men out there. I know that this is something that you're really passionate about, and so I'm curious to know how, when you get to Georgia, I know that you and I have spoke a little bit about one of the reasons why you chose Georgia, beyond the fact that your professor is spectacular, is also just because some of those similar kind of passions seem to run from her. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the professor at the University of Georgia, the professor of saxophone there, is a woman. Her name is Dr. Connie Frigo, and she's a huge role model of mine, because, in saxophone, there's a real problem of women being underrepresented. We make up about 20 to 30%, depending on if you're a student or a professional, of saxophonists, which is really shocking. And we also experience a lot of really unique challenges that male saxophonists don't. And so I'm really looking forward to studying with a female professor, because she can kind of speak to these issues of gender in saxophone that other professors maybe don't have that same experience. And it's just really empowering to see a woman really holding it down in Georgia, and the director of bands at the University of Georgia, Dr. Cynthia Johnston Turner, is also a woman. So I'm really looking forward to working with her, whatever large ensembles look like in the fall, pandemic willing. But yeah, and I also am really lucky to work on the North American Saxophone Alliance Committee on the Status of Women, of which Dr. Frigo is one of the co-chairs. The other co-chair is Dr. Kim Leffert. And I've just been so excited to kind of sink my teeth into these really tough issues of, women and our experiences. Yeah.
Well, I want to know more about the Committee on the Status of Women. What is that? I guess that's my initial question. I know I've heard about it, and I've looked a little bit into it, but what exactly is the role that committee serves?
That's a great question. The North American Saxophone Alliance Committee on the Status of Women was established in 2018 to support the professional development of women saxophonists and to promote gender equity in saxophone, and to serve as a repository of resources concerning gender in saxophone. And so there's a lot of hats that the Committee on the Status of Women wears. There's the Women's Mentoring Program, where collegiate and professional women saxophonists are paired together, and because we really recognize the importance of that mentorship and encouraging women to pursue saxophone professionally. We're also gathering online resources for our website, NASA CSW website, and I currently serve on the allyship committee. So we're in the process of determining what it means to be an ally in saxophone and how we can educate our allyship and kind of improve the level of allyship that we're seeing in the saxophone community. And then also just engaging in online dialogues and kind of engaging with women and gender non-conforming individuals, and really supporting them in their careers as well.
I added salt, pepper, oregano, and red peppers while you were talking. All of that, the amount that you put in there is really to your taste. Now we're gonna put the tomatoes into our vegetable mix. I'm using a crushed San Marzano, but you can use really any crushed tomato product. I also experiment quite a bit with tomatoes when I cook and use. I've used diced tomatoes. I've used already made tomato sauce. I've used whole peeled tomatoes. It really just depends on how much time you have, and it also just depends on the consistency of the sauce that you're making. My partner is going to be here tomorrow, and I'm very, very excited about that. And he does not like when I use whole peeled tomatoes at all, because he doesn't like a chunky tomato sauce. So I somewhat purposely chose crushed tomatoes because I knew that he was going to be excited to eat this when he gets home tomorrow. Because the nice thing about lasagna is that there's lots of leftovers. Anyways, so I want to go back. I want to continue talking about the committee that you're serving on. As you know, in June, I hosted a Pride brunch. And one of the things that I was thinking about when I was putting the group of people together is, okay, I don't want all cis white men as the people who were doing on the show, although everybody who was involved were coupled up, so some of that was just by nature. But I was definitely also trying to think a little bit about the intersectionality, but also everybody I invited on was awesome, and I knew that they would like me, and they seemed to really like one another. But I'm curious to know, in what has the committee been doing in regards to intersectionality with the various different identities that circulate the word woman?
So as I mentioned, I am serving on the allyship committee, and so one thing that's really been on my mind as I consider what it means to be an ally is that I, as a cisgender white woman, am an ally myself to other women, in that I'm an ally to BIPOC women, I am an ally to transgender, gender non-binary, and gender non-conforming individuals. And then another thing I'm thinking about a lot is just how queer issues factor into saxophone, because a lot of times that dimension of diversity is not necessarily visible, but it is really important to kind of focus on that as a dimension of allyship as well. You know, especially with Pride Month happening, I've been thinking about that a lot. And so one term that the Committee on the Status of Women uses a lot is the term Women Plus. There are other terms out there that kind of, you know, refer to people who are not cisgender males, but that basically is the community that we're seeking to serve. And we had the North American Saxophone Alliance is a very small population of transgender individuals, and so it's a real goal of mine to seek how we can best serve those individuals and kind of make NASA more inclusive. Because you know a lack of that population is something that we need to take really seriously if there's anything about our organization that we can change maybe to make it more inclusive. So
yeah, really, really great answer. You also mentioned that you're on the allyship committee. Can you talk just a little bit about how people could be better allies?
Absolutely. I think a big step for potential allies to take is to educate themselves on the women's movement and on sex and gender issues globally, like in conceptual terms. And there are a lot of really great resources out there, texts, articles, you know, individuals to follow on social media who talk about these issues just in isolation. And I think there are ways to connect what we learn from those educational resources to concrete actions that we take in our daily lives. And I think one of the biggest things that male allies can do for Women Plus is to collaborate with and commission Women Plus, because a lot of times we engage in collaborations based off of the connections that we make, because of course we do. And I think a lot of times we make connections with people who are similar to us, or people who just happen to be around us because of the environment that we're in. And so a lot of times the collaborations that result maybe are less diverse than we would want, just because, you know, if I'm a man, most of my friends are probably men. And so I want to make music with my friends. And so I end up collaborating with a lot of other cisgender men. And then women are kind of left out of that community. And so I think the more that you can surround yourself with diversity of who you're listening to, you know, who you're looking up to, who you're engaging with on social media, you know, who's around you in your school of music, the more we can create more diverse collaborations. So I guess those would be a couple starting points for folks looking to be better allies.
What vegetables are you using?
So I have red peppers and zucchini, but I really like mushrooms. So I did mushrooms instead of the yellow squash.
Awesome. Next, we're gonna add our vegetables to our sauce. And I'm using zucchini and yellow squash. Grace, what are you using today?
I have mushrooms and red peppers and zucchini.
I am not a fan of mushrooms, is what I'm gonna say. But
I think we can put in whatever we want.
Exactly. That's why that's my cooking style, is that a recipe can say whatever you want it to say, and you can do whatever you want with it. whatever you want with it. And the reason why I'm adding the zucchini and the squash now is because I want to let it cook just a little bit down so before it goes into the oven, so that way it is more of like this incorporated layer that goes in there, as opposed to it being sauce, zucchini, or sauce, vegetable, cheese, so on. Anyways, so Grace, we recently collaborated on a piece together called "What Is Your World?" And as you mentioned, it was a consortium along with 3 other LGBTQ plus saxophonists from around the country, and I just want to know, I know why you commissioned me, but I would love for you to share a little bit about how that project came to be, and maybe how that project has influenced you in the future for future collaborations that you might work on.
Yeah, so this collaboration came about after I performed my senior recital in February of 2019. And on the recital, I programmed a piece called Big Talk by a composer named Shelley Washington, who at the time I didn't know, but Spencer already knew because they both went to NYU. That's correct, right?
She started the year after I left, but I knew who she was because of that.
Sure, yeah. So, and that piece was hugely important to me as a saxophonist in terms of my trajectory and my musicianship, just because it really powerfully speaks on the issue of rape culture, which, and in not just the music, but also in the performative art, and in terms of what you wear, and a poem that is said before each performance. And that piece was just so powerful to me. And so Spencer attended my senior recital, and he saw that performance, and we just really got to talking about those kinds of issues, and social issues in music, which is a huge passion of mine that in the future I'm really hoping to pursue more and more. And then we got to talking that, both of us are queer, and there isn't really music about queer issues for saxophone. That both of us are saxophonists, and we couldn't really think of any music in that vein. And so I was really excited to commission Spencer kind of to ruminate on queer issues and identity in music, and that is how the piece got started. And I'm really, really happy with what he and I and what the consortium came up with. I'm also a huge proponent of electronic music, electroacoustic music. So yeah, that's a little bit about how that collaboration started.
Now that our sauce is done, let's layer the lasagna. How we're gonna do this is we're gonna start with a layer of the sauce with the vegetables, and that will go on the bottom. Make sure you spray your casserole dish, so that'll go in the bottom. And then we're gonna use no-bake lasagna sheets. I chose no-bake just purely because I think that it tastes the same personally. Some people might disagree, but you know what? It's my show. Layer of sauce, layer of noodles. We're gonna put the next layer with some of the ricotta mixture, which is just ricotta and eggs mixed together. Use as much or as little ricotta as you like. Then you're gonna put a layer of mozzarella and Parmesan. Then you're gonna put more sauce, and then you're gonna do that again. And just repeat those layers over and over again. While we're doing that, I wanted to ask Grace a follow-up question to the last question related to how she, what she's learned from the collaboration that she did with me, and how she'd like to move forward as she continues on in classical saxophone, either through commissioning or other collaborations?
So one thing I'm really excited to do is just commission more queer composers. I found that working with you, Spencer, was so empowering to me as a queer musician, because I feel that sometimes, you know, we are silenced in our queer identities just because that's not acceptable, or it's not, you know, viewed as like necessary or important to our music making. But I really think that it is, because it's a part of who we are and, you know, how we experience life. And so I'm really excited to commission more queer composers. And I'm also really excited to, you know, once I move to Athens, to really engaging with the queer community there. Because Athens as a city is just really quirky and unique. And, you know, from the research I've done so far, I'm really excited to get to know everybody down there. And of course, Atlanta is an hour and a half away, and they have a really robust queer community there. And just collaborating with not just composers, but also queer organizations, and kind of giving back to the community in that way.
Now that I'm done layering it, I'm going to cover the lasagna with aluminum foil. And I'm going to stick it in the oven at 350 degrees. Hopefully you preheated your oven. The nice thing about this recipe is that you could actually make the lasagna the night before, or in the morning, and then stick it in the oven when you get home from work, which is really nice. And so you're going to stick it in the oven, covered for about 20 minutes or so, and then we will come check on it. And I'm personally going to add a layer of spinach and parsley on the top just to add a little greenness, but I don't want to cook that the whole length, because it doesn't need the full amount of, it doesn't need more than 20 minutes in the oven. So we're going to stick it in the oven. I just took the lid off, and I'm actually going to add some herbs. I have basil, I have spinach and parsley, just like a mix. I'm just gonna sprinkle some on top. I really like doing that because it just adds a little bit of freshness. And I really like that little bit of extra freshness on my lasagna. So we just put it back in the oven. It's been in the oven for about 15 minutes. I'm just gonna check on it, see what it looks like. But then I'll probably broil it in the oven for another minute or two on the lowest setting. For just a minute or two, we're just gonna keep an eye on it because we want that browning effect on the cheese, because that's the best part, isn't it? So let's check on it. This is stunning looking. How does yours look?
It looks so good.
And we're just gonna really keep an eye out on it. Everyone's broiler is different, so I'm gonna put the timer on for about a minute, and then we'll check on it, because it does need to heat up a little bit. But we just really want to keep an eye on it, because the worst thing we could do is it would burn, and we don't want that to happen, obviously. And this just looks spectacular.
Ooh, mama. Wow.
Yeah, that looks wonderful. And this was your first lasagna?
So I've made like lasagna before, but I haven't done this recipe.
Wonderful. Well, so one of the really important things with lasagna is that you let the thing cool before you enjoy it for about 15 to 20 minutes. Honestly, if you go for 30, that's probably even better. because that way you get the actual slice of lasagna and not a hot mess, which I don't think we want. So it's been so wonderful having Grace on the show today. I'm so excited to eat this lasagna. Grace, what's the best way of finding more out about the Committee on the Status of Women and about yourself?
The best way to find out more about the North American Saxophone Alliance Committee on the Status of Women is by visiting our website at nasacsw.weebly.com. And the best way to learn more about me is by visiting my website at gracegelpi.com. Thank you so much for having me, Spencer.
Absolutely, it was my pleasure. All of these links will be in the description below. I'll also put a link to the recipe. I'll put links to Grace's Instagram and other social aspects of things, including the piece that she performed, her performance of my piece. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. We want people to watch the show, and if you don't know about it, how are you supposed to watch it? And lastly, thank you so much to Grace for being on the show. Please, if you make the lasagna, show us pictures. I want to see them, and tag me in them. I'm super excited to see what you make. So have a wonderful day and enjoy your lasagna.